Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about Season 24. And my question is, does it suck? And my answer is, of course, no. Now, what I've been doing lately with this kind of Does It Suck series I've been doing is I've been looking at some of the, what sometimes are called less than stellar Classic Who seasons, the ones that aren't just necessarily considered masterpieces, like the Williams era, Season 18. Now, for me, there's no bad seasons in Classic Doctor Who. I think they're all good to one degree or another. And I enjoy Season 4. The one, most of the time, I think from a lot of what I see from a lot of people, if they were talking about the weakest season of Classic Doctor Who, the ones I seem to see from people a lot is Season 23, Season 24. Seems to be one of those two. Now, my least favorite season of Classic Doctor Who is Season 23. So I can't say I'm going against the grain there. But I do think Season 24 is better than its reputation, especially when you factor in all of the behind-the-scenes stuff going on. You have Colin Baker being fired, the rush to find a replacement, all of the behind-the-scenes drama going on with Time and the Ronnie, which is a video all in itself. If you know, you know. Then, of course, you have the toning down of the violence, because seasons 21 and 22 were very violent. They kind of got in trouble for that, so they had to scale that back, which they did some in season 23. And so you have in season 24 a script editor who is great. I absolutely think Andrew does a great job here. Cartmel does a really good job. But you can tell he wants to tell kind of a darker story, but he kind of has his wrist tied behind him on what he can do because they want to tone down the violence. So what you end up is with several stories with dark subject matter shot in a very lighthearted style. Now, I've said this before about season 24, that it is a very dark season with a coat of rainbow paint splashed over it. A very, very thin coat of rainbow paint. Because it is shot, in a very overlit style, a very camp style. There's some physical comedy, slapsticks type stuff going on, some pantomime type stuff. But when you get into the nuts and bolts of the actual stories, when you're looking at things like cannibalism and people being fed to a machine, basically, people being dragged down garbage chutes, an entire busload of people being killed just because and not being saved. They're just dead. And the thing about Delta is the busload of people who get killed, it doesn't really draw just attention to that. They don't dwell on it. It just happens and it's done. Entire busload of people. And the fact that they wouldn't even have been there if the one guy hadn't dropped the crystal, which is treated very comedically when he does that, but he gets everyone killed. And even Dragonfire being, you have a character who sells his crew into servitude, slavery, basically. You have Kane, who is just, a cold person himself, quite literally. You have Kane's death, by the way, which is straight out of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you have these dark things happening in stories that are executed in a way that makes it tonally confusing. But because of the way, not only is it shot and directed, but the fact that you have a busload of people die and it's not really commented on. It's just kind of glossed over and we move on. So tonally, it's a little all over the place because the stories are doing this, whereas the execution of the story is doing this, because that's just how their hands were tied at the time. Now, I maintain that 3 of these stories are really good. Delta and the Bannerman is not good. Delta and the Bannerman actually could be the worst story in classic Doctor Who. I'm not sure if I would put it there, but it would be in my top 5 least favorites. It's just executed a bit badly for me. I get really confused by it. I'm glad it's not the first episode of Doctor Who I ever saw, or I'd be... the camp they're at looks like it's run down and been closed for years, because it was a camp that was run down and had been closed for years or was about to close or something like that. It very obviously wasn't in use. But then you have Time on the Ronnie, which is far better than it's given credit. I enjoy it well enough. I love the fact Kato Mara is obviously having the time of her life. I love that. That sells it for me, even if her disguise as Mel doesn't quite work. I love Sylvester McCoy playing the Spoons owner is hilarious. You couldn't do that nowadays, but I have a feeling Sylvester and Kate and Katie just Kate O'Mara probably just found it hilarious. She looked like she was having a good time on set, especially after being in America working on a soap opera for a couple years. The special effects in it aren't bad for the most part. I mean, some of them haven't aged well, but especially for their time, they're pretty impressive. The regeneration's a bit naff, but what else could they do in that situation? It works for what it is, and I like the costume of the people who are indigenous to the planet. The costumes of the Tetraps are really good. It really looks like they put some money into the production for classic Who. Then you have Paradise Towers, which is fantastic. I really like it. And you have Dragonfire, which is really good and subverts expectations with the alien I like there. The kind of alien-looking creature from Alien, which turns out to be benign, that I like. And it's a great introduction to Ace. It's a great farewell for Mel. And we get Glitz back, and I like Glitz a lot. Tony did such a good job with Glitz. So I like season 24. Is it as good as 25 and 26? Debatable. Probably not as good as 26. I'd stack it right up with 25. I mean, 25 does have Greatest Show in the Galaxy kind of holding it back. But Greatest Show in the Galaxy is a lot better than Delta and the Bannerman, too. So, but I think it's really, really good. The problem with season 24 is I think people hold when it came out against it. People who watched it at the time it came out, who were like, okay, this isn't Tom Baker. This isn't what we're used to in Doctor Who. This is different. You know, people who had been watching a show that had been around for almost a quarter of a century at this point, maybe they thought it was running out of gas. I mean, Greatest Show in the Galaxy does a good job at kind of calling some of the Doctor Who fandom of the time out, with, of course, with its kind of nerd character in it, kind of poking fun at the fandom at the time. And I'm sure there were fans that annoyed JNT at the time who were like that, just like there are now. Of course, the numbers weren't good for season 24, or even the McCoy era as a whole. Part of this is, of course, because it was scheduled against Coronation Street, and Coronation Street was a juggernaut at the time. So obviously that's going to hurt numbers. It's not like today where Mom and Dad are watching Coronation Street in the living room. I'll just go to my room and watch TV. I have a feeling it was like it was when I was a kid. There was one TV in the house. One TV. And if your parents wanted to watch something else, you were screwed. So if you were like, yeah, cool, a new episode called Dragonfire, I want to watch that, and your parents were like, no, we're watching Coronation Street. Of course, that just means they were terrible parents. That's what it is. And you didn't really get reruns back then, so you kind of either caught it or you didn't. It's not like now where people have access to home media. I mean, home media existed back then, but I'm willing to bet Doctor Who wasn't really coming out on VHS a lot in 1987, especially not like the current episodes. I don't know, but I don't think so. Plus, the VHSs would have been probably pretty expensive at the time if they had. You know, you're talking $20 an episode or something like that, or whatever the pounds equivalent would be. Also, there was no iPlayer where you could go watch it. You couldn't catch clips online. You couldn't just pull it up on your Disney Plus or BritBox or whatever and just watch it whenever you wanted at your own leisure. You had to catch that broadcast. At least now, you know, when the show has lower numbers. Now, part of the reason why the show has lower numbers now is, let's just be honest, viewing habits have changed. I mean, the viewing habits are just different in 2024. Let's be honest. And there's so much to watch out there now between all these different services, so many shows. You have so many more options now. Unlike, say, 1987, where here I could watch like 4 channels. I had like 4 channels, including PBS. And you never know when you were going to catch Doctor Who on that. But I'm guessing in the UK, you probably only had 3, 4, 2, whatever channels. Now you just have so many options. And it's not just the stuff that's on at the time, but stuff you can watch anytime. Do I want to watch that new episode of Doctor Who, or do I want to go watch an old episode of Knight Rider or Airwolf? Stuff like that. Would you rather just be rewatching Columbo or something? Rewatching Tom Baker, Doctor Who. So, on one hand, that could be why the numbers are lower now, is simply because there's so many options. and people can catch it up later. On the other hand, and I think that shows, actually, when you look at surrounding shows, I really do think, and I think this is one of the things some of the YouTubers on YouTube fail to acknowledge, is if you're looking at a show's numbers, you have to look at all the other shows that come out around it. You know, if your show gets 7 million viewers and everything around it gets 10 million viewers, then yeah, you're doing bad. But if your show gets 7 million viewers and everything around you is getting 4 million viewers, 5 million viewers, 6 million viewers, then you're doing really well. So I think you got to have that context of how everything else that's airing that day or around that time or that week, if you're looking at the consolidated numbers, is doing numbers-wise. Because the new episode of Doctor Who did 7 million, had 7 million people watch it. 7 million views. I mean, that's cool, but I have no context to tell if that's good or not. If everything else around it did 12 million views, then yeah, that did terrible. But if everything else around it did 3 million views, then it did outstanding. You see the difference. And a lot of channels neglect to mention that. So I do think you have to look at context of how everything around it is doing. That being said, I also think that people who want to watch Doctor Who are going to watch Doctor Who. I think this shows when you look toward the end of the Whittaker era, and the overnights and the consolidateds were, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. I think Legend of the Sea Devils is literally the second lowest viewed episode of Doctor Who. I think the viewing figures were the second lowest the show has ever done, with the lowest being episode 1 of Battlefield. Although Battlefield as a whole, looking at all 4 parts, was still higher than Legend of the Sea Devils. But I think, I can't remember if it was the overnights or the consolidateds were like 3.4 or something. It was low. And the same thing with a lot of the episodes toward the end of Whittaker's run, where you're looking at the consolidateds in the 4 million, the 5 million. Whereas you look at the David Tennant specials and suddenly you're back in the consolidateds looking around 7 million. Even the Christmas special, like 7.5 million. That's a huge uptick going from 4.3, 4.5 to 7.5 million. That's 3 million more people. So the point is, people who want to watch Doctor Who are going to watch Doctor Who. They might have other things they want to watch. They might not watch it overnight. But again, calling back to what I said earlier, it's so much easier to watch Doctor Who now. If I miss the overnight, and I'm here in the States, although it does come up, I think, on Disney Plus at the same time, but if I can't watch it right when it goes live, I can watch it whenever I want. And as a Doctor Who fan, a big Doctor Who fan, obviously, I'm going to watch it sometime in that 7-day period. I think most people, with as easy access as it is to watch episodes in 2024, I think people who are big Doctor Who fans who want to watch Doctor Who, sometime in that 7-day window, they're going to find the time to watch Doctor Who. I mean, I don't know, maybe you got 4 kids or something and you just don't quite get to it, and it takes you, somewhere within the 28-day period to watch. But I feel most people will be able to set aside 45 minutes or an hour, especially since there's no commercials, to watch Doctor Who in a 7-day period. It's so much easier than, say, someone trying to watch season 24 when you couldn't do that. You had to catch it on broadcast. There was no internet, no iPlayer to catch it up on. So, numbers, it's really weird with numbers because the viewing habits are different, but at the same time, I am firmly convinced that people who want to watch Doctor Who are going to watch Doctor Who. So, for me, the numbers are still important to a degree. People who don't want to watch Doctor Who aren't going to watch Doctor Who. It's the same argument for, I put whenever I talk about City of Death, because City of Death not only is my favorite Doctor Who story, it is still, to this day, the Doctor Who story with the highest viewing figures of all time, with episode 4 getting 16.1 million views. That's still the record for Doctor Who. And people always, of course, want to bring up the ITV strike. Well, it's all because of the ITV strike. Maybe it is. I'm sure that has something to do with it. But the point is, the reverse of what I just said is true. People who don't want to watch Doctor Who would not watch Doctor Who. So if people had not been at least willing to sit through Doctor Who, they wouldn't have watched it. It wouldn't have hit 16.1 million views. It hit that because the people watching it, at least to some degree, wanted to watch it. They would have turned the TV off. They would have went to the bedroom with their wives. They would have gotten out and done something. The point is, if someone's not in the mood to watch Doctor Who, they're not going to watch Doctor Who. People who want to watch Doctor Who will watch Doctor Who. I firmly believe that. So, with 16.1 million people, we're obviously still willing to watch Doctor Who in 1979 when that episode came out. And I feel that if the Doctor Who fandom and the need in the fandom to watch the new stuff coming out is there, people will come watch. Because again, the consolidateds are the important numbers. I don't really look at the overnights much. Because, you know, the world is so busy today. Everybody's on the go. Everybody's on the go. I stay busy, even though I don't have kids. My best friend stays busy. He has 4 kids. Okay, he might not be able to actually watch in a 7-day period, possibly. He's a very busy guy. But I think most people, if they are Doctor Who fans, especially if they're more than just casual Doctor Who fans, I think sometime in that 7-day period, they're going to find time to watch. It might be at 5 in the morning before they go to work. It might be at 1 in the morning after they've got the kids to bed. But sometime they're going to set aside an hour of their day to watch. That's what I think. But I still believe the numbers. I still believe you do have to look at the numbers in relation to how every other show around them is doing. So I don't know. I guess the truth is somewhere in the middle of those ideologies the people on YouTube preach. I think it's, you know, there's what they say, and then there's the truth somewhere in the middle. But season 24, going back to that, remember this was a video about season 24? I think it's a good season. I think Sylvester McCoy is good in the role. I mean, he was a showman, comedian type character to begin with. He does that well. Mel's less irksome, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a big Mel fan. I think Mel's best outing might have been in The Kickle. And we get the introduction of Ace, which I like, and we have 3 out of 4 stories I really like. I think season 24 is a good season overall, especially when I factor in all of the behind-the-scenes stuff going on at the time. I want to know, what do you think of season 24? What do you think is the weakest season of classic Doctor Who? Comment down below and let me know. Other things to do, don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon if you like what I do and would like to support what I do. There's a link to that down in the description below as well. I also have YouTube memberships available. My P.O. box is down there as well. If there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. I also have links to my Amazon wish list down there as well. I update that regularly. Check that out. Most importantly, thank you for watching.